Hi everyone, Dave here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Legends of the Spire. Good to have you with us. Now on the podcast today, I spoke to Phil Bonnyman. Now Phil is from Glasgow and started his career at Glasgow Rangers. Joined Chesterfield on transfer deadline day in 1980, and in his 2 and a bit seasons with Chesterfield, we finished near the top of the league, just missing out in each of his seasons with us. The big key thing, I suppose, that happened around that time as well was the Anglo Scottish Cup, which celebrated its 40th anniversary this year. He scored against Rangers on the way to that final victory against Notts County, so it was good to speak to him about those games. It was also good to hear about the players that he played with around that time, people like Danny Wilson, Andy Kowalski, and obviously the great Ernie Moss as well. So I hope you really enjoy the chat and it brings back some memories of that time at the club. As always, we are at Spy Legends on Twitter, Legends of the Spy on Facebook and Instagram, so please do get in touch if there's anyone you'd like to hear from, and I'll do my best to get them on. But here we are with the latest episode with the great Phil Bonnyman. So you're actually one of a few Scottish players we've had on, and even starting at Rangers as well. We had Peter Leven on recently, who started at Rangers. So was that the early 70s? You were kind of a youth player at Rangers?
Yeah. I was there. I was 70, 71 till nearly 73. Yeah.
Were they the team that you were supporting when you were a kid?
No. I was a Partick Thistle supporter.
Oh, right.
The part of Glasgow that I was born, Mary Hill, was right next to Partick Thistle's football ground. And my dad took me as a kid to watch Partick Thistle. So once you're a supporter of their team, that's you're stuck.
Yeah. Were you never tempted to go to Partick instead of Rangers, or was that just the way it went?
What, to play? Well, I never get the opportunity. So, Rangers was the opportunity that came first. So that's the one I took.
Did you manage to play? Did you have one appearance for Rangers? Was it
one game? Yeah. It's a game that I would dearly love to forget. And people talk about the game that I played, and also the games that I played for Chesterfield against Rangers, and you could say that I had a part in 2 of Rangers' worst results. So one good and one bad for me.
Who'd have known what happened?
It was a game that was in the League Cup, and Rangers had already won the first leg. We'd already won the first leg 6-1, I think 5-1. I played in the second one, and we lost it 1-0. And it was a horrible game. Principally because that was my one and only game, but I wouldn't say I was the worst player on the night. There was a lot of people that didn't turn up. But anyway, that's the way things went, and it was a bad game that night.
So that didn't put you off football for good then?
No, I managed to hang on.
And then you actually moved on to Hamilton, didn't you?
Yeah. I went to Hamilton. The manager there, Eric Smith, who strangely, he was an ex-Celtic player when he was younger, but he then went down to Leeds, played at Leeds, and then went into management, and they managed at Morton and then Hamilton. Eric was given the opportunity to speak to me by Rangers. I was still a Rangers player, and I liked what he said, and it was the opportunity to regular first team football, and I went there. And it was good. I had a good couple of years at Hamilton. I enjoyed the football there. I actually played centre back when I was at Hamilton.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I played at centre back there, and I did okay. I felt really comfortable there. I did well. We had a good. It was at a time when the Scottish leagues were splitting from 2 leagues to 3. And so the top 12 in the top league, along with the bottom 6 in the top league and the top 6 of the second league, made up the middle league. And Hamilton, we finished, I think, 3rd in the league that year, and we went into the middle league. So it was, and it was a good league, that one. It was very competitive.
Yeah.
So I played all through that, but at centre back.
It's funny that, because a lot of players I've spoken to have all started their career up front and then ended up moving into midfield or as they get older. You've done it the other way around.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was after I went from Hamilton to Carlisle United, and it was after, because Carlisle, they've obviously seen me playing and they saw me playing there, but they bought me to play me in midfield, and so I said, yeah, okay, I'll go for that.
Yeah. So when you were a kind of a youth player, and were you in midfield? Were you converted to centre back then?
Well, when I was a young player at Rangers, I played midfield, and then when I went to Hamilton, I played at centre back. In fact, I must have done okay at centre back, because the Scottish second division, as we were then, we played the Italian second division in a friendly game, Scotland v Italy, and I was selected to play in that game. So I must have been doing something right.
Did you keep any memorabilia from matches like that?
No, I barely keep any memorabilia at all. I think I've still got the medal when I was at Chesterfield, when get selected into the team of the year, for that league. I've got that. I know I've got that, and I know I've got I think I've got the league championship medal when I managed Huntly in the Northern League here. But other than that, I don't think I've got anything.
Yeah, I suppose it wasn't. Did players around that time, did they kind of collect things, or was it just not really the done thing?
I don't know. I really don't know. I wasn't one for things. I mean, I've got a few old photographs and things like that, but barely anything else. No. The strange thing is, though, the memorabilia part for the Scotland-Italy game, I would have liked to have got a cap, but the game was abandoned about 5 minutes before the end, because there was a real torrential downpour. And it was during the summer, so the pitch was baked hard and the water just could not get through the ground. So we were playing in about 3 or 4 inches of water, and the referee just said, no, abandoned. So the game really didn't take place. So we never got a cap. So that was a disappointment.
Yeah, I bet. You think, yeah, crikey. I can only imagine.
I don't think I even get the fee for the game.
It just never happened, no, obviously. No. And then you mentioned going to Carlisle. So was moving to England ever kind of on your radar as a player?
Well, I mean, I think moving was on the radar. Where to is something that you can't. Well, you can't control it yourself unless you wait and wait and wait. So no, the fact that they come in, I mean, and they're not too far into England, so that was a little bit of a bonus for whenever I was travelling home. But when Carlisle came in, and they had just gone down, remember, from the old first division into the second division. So they were a good side at the time, had a lot of good players. So it was, and when I spoke to the manager and the coach who had met me, they sold the club pretty well, and it was a very obvious step up. Bearing in mind as well that I was part-time at Hamilton, so this was me going back into full-time football.
Yeah. Did you find that switch quite easy, going part-time to full-time? Did it take a while to get up to speed, or?
No, I was okay. I was fine. Once you get there and you're training with the players, and I think I adapted very quickly. In fact, I think I was okay straight away. Because I think I went down there signed on the Wednesday or Thursday, and I was playing on the Saturday, and I was okay. That was it. I think it was at Southampton, and we drew with Southampton.
Yeah.
So I adjusted fairly quickly for that.
Yeah, and looking at your stats, you always seemed pretty regular in the team, played a lot of games for most of the clubs you played with, didn't you?
Well, I don't remember. I don't remember ever not been playing at any of the clubs I was at, unless I was injured or suspended.
Yeah, because I was looking at Carlisle. You played kind of over 150 games for Carlisle, didn't you? And then in those seasons with Hamilton, it was kind of 70 odd games. Always chipping in with a good few goals as well.
Yeah, well, I think probably Chesterfield. I was my most goals per game. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but I think it probably was. Yeah, as I say, I was a first team regular at all the clubs I was at, apart from Rangers, of course. And then when at Darlington was the only club at the end of my career when, I had a couple of bad injuries. That was the only time that I missed a lot of games. But prior to that, particularly with Carlisle, Chesterfield and Grimsby Town, I was almost an ever-present, so to speak.
And for people that have not seen you play, describe yourself as a player?
I'd say I was fairly balanced. Good on my left and my right side. A lot of people didn't know whether I was left-footed or right-footed, because somebody like Jeff Salmons, he would chip in. You were hopeless both sides. But I was decent on the ball, can pass the ball, could get up and down the pitch, okay, box to box. Tackling wasn't my best, but a lot of times I won the ball by reading the game and interceptions and things like that. So, yeah, that would be decent in the air. Yeah, I think that all round I was okay.
Yeah, and I imagine being good on both feet means that you can create yourself a bit of space against opposition players.
Well, the thing about that is they can't push you to one side or the other and put you in a weaker position. Whatever way they want you to go, yeah, I'll go that way because I felt comfortable on the ball like that.
So you ended up coming to Chesterfield. Transfer deadline day, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was. I'd been contacted a day or two before. In fact, it was. I think I was away at a match with Carlisle. We were away at Swindon, and there was my telephone in the hotel room. I was rooming with Ian McDonald, who was my roommate, big centre half from Carlisle, and lifted the phone, and somebody just said to me, Chesterfield's just offered a lot of money for you to Carlisle, and the phone went down. So I went along and spoke to Bobby McCurr, who was the Carlisle United manager at the time. And I said, have you had an offer for me from another club? And him and Martin Harvey, who was the first team coach, looked at each other and just said, well, right. So they took me out of the team for that night. And after the game, they told me, who it was and that I want to speak and things like that. So it all, went very quickly after that.
Yeah. Who was it then on that phone? It wasn't someone from Chesterfield making sure that you knew about it.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and what was it? So was it quite did you get a choice whether to move? Was it just one of those things where it was just a good?
Well, yeah, obviously the final word's mine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's three people can pull out of it. It's either of the clubs or me.
Yeah.
So, Carlisle United wanted it because of the amount of money. Chesterfield wanted me to go, so it was down to my decision in the end up. And yeah, I wanted to go because there had been quite a few teams had, made overtures about signing me prior to this. And, I'd set my mind that at some point, because I think Carlisle at the time we'd lost a few players. A lot of the players that had been there from when I was there, they had left in the team, and it was very difficult. It's difficult for a club like Carlisle to attract players. You know, they're so far out of touch with, you know, the mainstream, and to also replace the players of the same quality when they're trying to bring in money, because, you know, maybe things were getting a little bit tight for money. So to get away at that time was maybe a good idea for the club and for me, you know, to move things on a bit.
And what were your first impressions of the club?
Of Chesterfield?
Yeah.
Well, the ground, it was, you know, a traditional old-fashioned ground. You know, and that was okay, because that was what a lot of the grounds were similar to that, you know, all over the, you know, the country. When I get in and met the lads and of training and things, and I fitted in fairly quickly. I just thought, well, I'm at the level of these players that are here. In fact, you know, and maybe I was a bit, I felt as if I was okay as soon as I went in there. It was great, and it was good. There was a couple of players that I knew. I knew Bill Green, because Bill played at Carlisle United with me, and other players that I knew because of playing against them. The other thing was, there was a couple of players arrived at a similar time to me. John Turner, the goalkeeper, John Stirk, and maybe about 3 or 4 weeks later, Danny Wilson. So there was a few that, you know, came in at the same time, and we all had to get used to each other. But we settled in quickly, and yeah, I thought we were a good side.
Yeah, I've just started a new job myself, and it is nice not being the only new person starting.
Yeah.
You're not the butt of everyone.
A friendly face, because don't forget as well that when you come into a club and you're new, there's a few others thinking, where's he going to play? Who's going to get left out? Because you know for sure that you're obviously going to play. But you know, that's just the nature of the game.
But on Tuesday night, Chesterfield battled back from going a goal down to Swindon Town. Swindon taking the lead on the half hour, an own goal there by Colin Tart. And it was 1-0 to Swindon at half-time. And that's the way it stood until halfway through the second half, until Alan Birch struck in the equaliser, his 15th goal of the season. 7 minutes later, Phil Bonnyman, Chesterfield's record signing from Carlisle, grabbed the winner, that really powerful header, a valuable goal, and Chesterfield moved back into third place.
And what did Arthur Cox say to you in terms of how he wanted you to fit into the team?
Well, Arthur was quite basic in the coaching. He was more of a manager than a coach, and he was pretty straightforward in what he wanted to do. He wanted to get it up to front players very quickly. If you were deep, he wanted to get it round, you know, over the back of them and things like that. And as time went on, we kind of tried to, you know, influence them playing through the midfield a wee bit more, because, you know, when you've got players like Jeff Salmons and Danny Wilson in the midfield, you know, and then include myself, you know, that's where the strength in your side is. Get it into to us, and then we can service players like Alan Crawford and Alan Birch. You know, get it to the players that are going to really hurt teams, you know, in the forward areas. But if you play long passes all the time, you know, you're maybe going to give the ball away a wee bit more than passing through the midfield. And we tried to influence that a bit more. I think that happened a wee bit more after Arthur Cox left, and then Frank became manager, because Frank, you know, had different ideas on what to do in the game, and Frank was more of a coach and a manager. You know, so Frank was good in the coaching field, so, you know, he was quite happy with doing that.
Yeah, and I was talking to Phil Walker, and he was talking about how maybe Arthur Cox had to slightly change how he managed, because different players came in that maybe had good reputations from previous clubs, and he maybe had to work with them a slightly different way with how he'd worked when he first came to Chesterfield. Did you see any changes while he was there in terms of how he managed?
Well, I think that when you have players that have got the experience of Jeff Salmons and Ernie Moss and Bill Green at the back, and they could see, and even I've all right through my career, I've always been pretty vociferous in the changing room and made points and things like that, and even Danny Wilson, for being a young lad at the time, had his he had his point of view as well at times, and I think when you have the players asking for certain things, can we look at this, can we see how this might work, blah blah blah, then if it doesn't change it, then you can get a group of players that are maybe a wee bit disgruntled that they're not being listened to.
Yeah.
So that I think partly maybe made them change a wee bit. So yeah, I can see that. And Frank Barlow, he wasn't being coerced into changing things, but he liked to have the opinions of players. He'd say, "What do you feel? How do you feel about this?" and make it open.
Yeah,
which I think was good, because I say when you've got players that have played a few games and they're, they've got a wee bit of knowledge themselves, then it's good to know how they feel.
Mm. And and your debut, I think, was at Blackburn. I think it was. And then you scored. And then you scored. You actually scored in your second and third game. I think it was Swindon and Reading, I think. So you started scoring goals pretty quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, I must be honest, Dave. I can't really remember too well, the first few games. But yeah, I mean, I was given a wee bit of license to, get forward and support, Phil Walker and Ernie. So you do that and you get the opportunity. So yeah, I was pretty lucky enough and I had a good early start to score.
Yeah, and I noticed I think you played about 11 games at the end of that season after you joined, and you actually scored against Carlisle, didn't you?
I did. I remember that one. Yeah.
It's a bit weird going back.
Well, I remember it was a header. It was a cross from the left. I can't. It might have been Alan Crawford who crossed, or maybe even Sean O'Neill. And I scored the header. And all this stuff you see players just walking away when it's teams they played against. No, that wasn't for me. I ran away and I was giving it big time. I think we won that game 2-0.
Right.
So yeah, you score a goal. That's Chesterfield was the team I was playing for them, so that was my only concern, Chesterfield. So once you've left a club, then okay, you can have fun memories, but when you play against them, then you want to beat them. Sometimes even more than you want to beat other teams.
Too right. You should always celebrate a goal, even if
absolutely. I don't get that many that I wasn't going to celebrate it. No.
So that first season you were here, albeit only for the last few months of it.
Yeah.
Came fourth, I think. So it was, right up there, weren't we?
Yeah, we just missed out on promotion, and again the following season a similar thing, and that's one of the biggest disappointments, because I thought we had a good enough team to win promotion, and we failed. I would say we failed, because that was the objective, and we never managed it.
Mm-hmm. I'm asking you to think back a long way, but at the time, did you think there was any certain thing that maybe was just that little bit extra that was missing?
No, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you can just have a wee dip in form, or key players can have a dip in form, or chances are missed, or maybe goals are allowed in it, the other end, maybe a wee bit of slack defending or something. All of these things can contribute to it. But as I say, we were a good enough team to go into the next league up, and I think it was a real pity that we never. But that was what happens. I mean, the other teams. I mean, I know. I think Grimsby went up that year. When I joined, we had already played Grimsby twice, I think, by the time I was there. But I think Grimsby went up that year, and I think we kind of matched them to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But it's just these extra couple of points that take them there.
That's it. It's fine margins, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you mentioned Jeff Salmons. So I'll be honest with you. Before I started the podcast, I'd never really heard of Jeff Salmons, but every player I've spoken to from that era all says Jeff Salmons was amazing.
Jeff was a class player. I mean, well, you've seen where he's played.
Hmm.
And strangely enough, I met Jeff Salmons years before. When I was at Hamilton, we went. It was during the close season. We went to play in it was a 4-team competition tournament, in pre-season over in Cyprus. The chairman at Hamilton had business contacts over there, and we went across there along with Stoke City, Sheffield United, and it was an Orthosis Famagusta. The games were played at their ground, so we all had a kind of round robin. And I remember Jeff was actually at Sheffield, and coincidentally Stoke City were there as well, who moved to Stoke.
Yeah.
And I played against Jeff, but he told me that while he was over in Cyprus at that time, the Stoke City manager, Tony Waddington, he had tapped him up, and when he went back to England, he signed for Stoke. So, and Jeff didn't remember me. I remember him because he was the well-known player, and he had spoken to Alan Hudson, who had played at Stoke at that time as well, and Alan Hudson did wanted to come and play. But Jeff was a class player. I mean, his left foot was magnificent. Good player, real class.
Which other players at Chesterfield did you really like playing with? Were there any that you felt you had a really good understanding with?
Well, Danny Wilson, and another player who I don't think he got the credit that he deserved, because the likes of Danny and Jeff and myself to a certain extent as well, in midfield, we get all the kind of plaudits for doing this, that, and the other. But Andy Kowalski's got to be, he's got to be one of the best players I've played alongside for his ball winning capability, and not just in big heavy tackles and things, but he read the game brilliantly, and a lot of fans thought that he, a lot of the times he would allow a space for a ball to go through, and then as the player went down to pass the ball, he'd just move across and he'd intercept it, and then he would move the ball quickly to, one of the players, Alan Birch or Crawford or one of us, and he'd go and play it, and Andy would sit there and keep everything solid. So Andy Kowalski was a great player to play alongside, because he did so much great work in the team. The other ones, I mean, it was great. I mean, Alan Birch and Alan Crawford were great in the wide areas. They could do great things. And I think it was a shame that the condition of the pitches in these days, because if the pitches had been like they are now, I think Alan Birch could have been played in a more central role and been around the ball a lot more, because he would have terrorised teams with the ability he had. And of course, Ernie up front with Phil Walker was a good pair. And Phil's got to take a lot of credit as well, because Ernie is the greatest ever Chesterfield player. He's not the best footballer, but the greatest ever club servant. And Phil Walker did a lot to do a lot of things alongside him. So they were all good. And John Ridley and Bill Green at the back were fantastic. And Sean, as I say, we were a good side. In that league, we were a good team, and we could beat anybody. And I can't forget John Turner either, because John came and fantastic goalkeeper. Not just a great goalkeeper, but he had a great character about him. He would keep the dressing room alive all the time. He was mad at times, but he was really dead, keen on his game and making himself better and things. So John was a great keeper, but a great person in the dressing room for the club, for every other player.
It sounds like it was a really good squad that complemented itself both on the pitch and then in the dressing room as well.
Yeah, we did. There was no little cliques. There was no, sometimes at places you get 3 or 4 players sticking together and 2 or 3 here sticking together. We were all in, and if something had to be said, if we thought things were wrong, we would say it and to each other, and you had to take it, and in the way that it was meant, and it was only meant to help us in the next game to improve us. And it was a good atmosphere within the club.
For Chesterfield to adapt to this. Here is Alan Birch. Tag is the defender, and Massey helping him, and Birch leaves them both. Is there a gap for him at the near post? But here's Stark, and now Crawford, and touched in by Bonnyman. The goal is given, and after the scramble, the final touch was from Bonnyman.
And you mentioned about Danny Wilson being vocal in the dressing room. Do you think he was management material even when he was younger? Do some people just have that?
I don't know. It's funny because I think Danny, when he came, he was only about 21, 22 maybe. I might have only been about 25, 26 as well. But I just felt that wee bit older than him. And but Danny was such a good player. He had every right to, be vociferous. Well, every player does. We all have a right to do it. Sometimes we say things and then we realise, no, I shouldn't have said that, or that's not quite right, and somebody would put us right. But no, Danny, he had every right because of the ability he showed, I think he was years ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Going into management, I had no doubt that he would do well in that because his football intelligence was great.
I noticed as well that you scored you scored quite a few goals against Sheffield United. It seemed like whenever we had a local derby against Sheffield United, you seemed to score in it. You scored in quite a few of them. Did you like the local derbies?
Oh, they were brilliant because obviously there was a big crowd there. I remember scoring a couple of goals against Sheffield. I don't know how many I scored against them, but I remember I think I scored in 2 games in a row where it was 1-0 in each game. We beat them, and I scored in both of these games. Can't remember any others, but as I say, there's not much I can remember going back all these years.
Well, I think it was Dave Caldwell I was talking to, and he was saying that he's amazed at how fans can recite in detail specific games, and he said, I just don't know. I played hundreds of games. I can't tell them.
I know. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. There's certain things I can remember, but there's other things I say, like you say, the fans will talk to you about, and you'll think, oh no, I don't remember that at all. Strange. Yeah.
So that second season, well, the first full season with us, but second season was the Anglo Scottish Cup season, of which it was 40th anniversary this year, earlier this year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose everyone always asks you about the Rangers matches, don't they? But was it when that came up? Were you like, oh yeah, I fancy that?
Well, I was looking forward to the game up here. Big time, because to go and play at Ibrox would be nice, and a lot of the friends and family could come to the game as well. I tried to emphasise to the players that Rangers at that time, will always be a big club. However, at that time, there was a lot of changes going on. There was a lot of the players that were maybe coming towards the end of their career, and a lot of younger players maybe who you look at them and you thought, are they really the level that Rangers are going to take Rangers to compete, winning leagues and things? So I didn't think they were at the best at that time, and I don't mean to criticise any players, individuals, or the club itself, but I don't think they were the best ever team at Rangers at that time. So going up there, I felt, okay, if we can keep this nice and tight, we might have a wee chance. But to come away with a draw, was a fantastic result.
Yeah. Was it? I think it may have been Phil again that was saying that the bus ride home was a long one. Did you? Did you end up on the?
I don't think I came in. I don't think I don't know. I can't remember. Did I go back down in the bus? I can't remember. I thought I brought my car up and stayed. I can't remember, to be honest.
Probably the wiser option. It sounded like.
I can't remember.
There's a really nice film of all the fans getting on a plane and going up in a plane to Glasgow. I sometimes think there's not enough games between English clubs and Scottish clubs, even if they're from different leagues and things, because the fans love going up to Scotland for a bit of a jolly, and I imagine it must be vice versa as well.
Yeah, I would imagine the fans would have loved it. Yeah, and especially when you get a decent result, it makes it all the more worthwhile. Whether they can bring, I don't see them bringing a competition like that out again, though. I really don't. It's there's that many games in the season to try and cram more games in. I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah. Well, and we want to stay holders, so.
Well, yeah.
We're still European holders.
Yeah.
With the first leg score standing at 1-1, the visitors brought 5,000 fans to Saltergate for support. However, Rangers fell behind after just 15 minutes when their former apprentice Phil Bonnyman scored from a corner by Walker to put Chesterfield ahead. Just 2 minutes later, Bonnyman added a second when Rangers keeper McCloy stood motionless as Ridley supplied the opportunity to score.
It might have been 3 when a Rangers player palmed the ball away from the goal, but the referee didn't spot it.
Bury was assured when Ernie Moss scored goal number 3 to the delight of the home supporters.
That home leg then, I mean, it looked pretty easy. Was it pretty easy?
The game at Saltergate?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't easy. No. I mean, the fact is that we scored a couple of goals early on, and that changes the whole complexion of the game. They're then chasing to try and, get back into it. And when they do that and they leave themselves, we could have scored a couple more. But I mean, I don't know if you remember it at all. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible night. It was torrential rain at points. The pitch was really heavy. So it wasn't a great game of football. It wasn't a spectacle of football. But obviously the result was right. And it was, as I said to you at the start of the conversation, it was, what put down as one of Rangers is, worst defeats.
And they must have, the away fans must have got absolutely soaked in that.
Well, the funny thing was, after the game, I'd met my wife outside, and we were going to go down. I can't remember the name of the little place down. I can't even remember. Was it London Road down the bottom of Chesterfield?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, down
there was one of the pubs that they putting on a wee bit of a spread and things, and I got to the door and they were locked. The doors were locked, so I knocked on the door. And the guy said, opened up the door. I says, I went to see the guy. He says, sorry, nobody phased me. He thought I was from one of the Rangers fans. My accent. It closed the door again. So I knocked on it again. I said, no, we're here to meet some of the people in. We eventually get in. So we nearly never get in to see them.
And I think with the final against Notts County, I think you missed the first leg, I think, but then played in the actual final. Was it a bit weird, the final, because everyone remembers Rangers and remembers that game, and then.
Well, it is. I think it's one of the things that disappoints me. We need to remember that we beat a team that were in the top league. In the final, Notts County were in the first division, and we're a third division team, and we've beat them over 2 legs. So that was almost, if not better than the result against Rangers.
Yeah.
So we certainly deserve to win the trophy doing that.
Absolutely. And that season then, so I think you played pretty much every game. I think you only missed like two or three games, something like that. And like you mentioned, it was like 5th again. So was it Was it a bit disappointing? I mean, you won the cup, but was it almost a bit disappointing finishing fifth again? Or
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I thought I would have gladly foregone the Anglo Scottish Cup to get promotion. That would have been a bigger prize as far as I was concerned. And it's in the 2 full seasons I was there, that was the biggest disappointment to me, not getting promotion, because I think we were good enough as a team, and just certain things go wrong, and we missed out on it. So I think it was disappointing.
And so your 3rd season with us, like 2nd full season, that was when, like you mentioned, Frank Barlow was in kind of full charge for the full season. And then you scored a lot of goals that season. I think you've got 14 goals, I think, that season, and were an ever-present, played every game, I think.
Yeah.
Did he get you to play a slightly different way then, like you mentioned, with his?
Well, it gives a wee bit more license to go and get into the penalty box. I'd had the physical capacity to get penalty box to penalty box the whole game. So why not use that? And the more you get in the box, the more chances you're getting goals. If you don't get in the box, you're not going to score that many. There's not too many from outside 20, 25 yards.
Yeah.
So, but get inside, statistically, they're, between the 6-yard line and the penalty spot, that's where most of the goals come from. So get yourself into these areas, and you're putting yourself into a chance with, getting where the ball is.
Yeah. And I think that was the season when we were first. I think we were top of the league in March, but then finished 11th. So I wonder what happened in that couple of months.
Yeah, well, capitulation, I think. I think that's the word you're looking for. Yeah, we lost a lot of games. We finished the season poorly. And it's as I say, it's a shame, because you get up into the next league and you get a wee bit of money to spend on some more players to bolster the squad, and you never know what can happen. But it was disappointing, the ending to that season.
Is it hard as a player when you start losing a few, just trying to get back out of it? Does it just feel like you can't buy a win when something like that happens?
Well, yeah, I personally didn't physically or mentally feel that at all. You feel as if you can go out and win the game. Sometimes what's difficult is actually changing things when they're happening on the pitch, and there's things going wrong. And it just takes maybe a good chance you can score at one end and you don't, and then maybe a bit of a mistake somewhere on the pitch and it causes a goal at the other end. So these things are hard to budget for. But yeah, it was we had the players with the ability to get promotion, and we never brought that to the club, and that was a disappointment.
Yeah, and was that when, because then obviously finances started changing, didn't it, in the background a bit, and then a few players started to get sold and things like that, which you were one of them in the end, weren't you? Did you get a sense that maybe things were changing a bit in the background or not?
Well, see, as a player, you're kind of protected from that. Not protected so much, but you're kind of kept away from that. You don't know that side of it. Things can be in the press, but you don't really know for sure what's happening. I do know that they did need some money, and I think at that time, Alan Birch and Danny Wilson and myself, trying to think anybody else that went at that time, we were all given the opportunity to go, and that's what ended up happening. And the problem comes from there is that the money that they get for these players, they don't get all that to spend again on players. So you're not going to get the same level of player into the club. So is the team going to be as good as it's been? I don't know. So that's the problem that people that run clubs have, and in particular, the manager has the problem because he's maybe not got the same quality of player that he had, previous.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that at Chesterfield many times, even recently.
Yeah, well, that's all of the clubs of that size. They're all in the same situation. It's really difficult to keep clubs going of that size. Because as I say, you lose a player, but you don't get the amount of money you've received for that player to spend on another one. So and keep trying to find little diamonds from league, bottom of the leagues and non-league. They become harder to find as well because everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So to try and get these little, diamonds, these little nuggets from non-league teams, they become, more scarce all the time.
As a player, when one or two players start to go, does that just make it a little bit easier then when maybe something comes in for you because you get a sense that it's going to take a bit of time to build again?
Well, at Chesterfield, I was one of the players that left when they had to sell players. So I didn't see what happened at Chesterfield after that. But I can only imagine that the players that come in to fill the spaces that players have gone, if they're not at the same level, then the managers and coaches maybe have to deal with things differently. They maybe, we were quite an attacking, forward-going team. If they don't have the players to be able to do that, then they maybe have to set up differently and be nice and strong and, make sure you're not going to lose goals and then hit teams on breaks and things like that. So there's a whole new, mindset as to how to go about the games. But as I say, I wasn't at Chesterfield after, a few of us left. I never saw it there. And I'm trying to think, maybe I took the brunt of that at Carlisle United because I had gone there. They had just come down from the first division. And then a lot of real good players, John Gorman, who else? Likes of players like Chris Balderston and other top players. They left, and I was one of the ones coming in. So I was at the, so I didn't know what it was like before, and I was then playing, what the manager was asking for then. So the players that have left don't know what's happening at a club, and the players that have just come in didn't know what was happening previously. So they just all gel as quickly as they can to try and be the best they can.
Yeah. Well, we had John Duncan coming in the end, and John Duncan
he done a fantastic job. I mean, the cup run that they had with John was fantastic. In fact, I mean, it was just so unlucky in the end. But that was a fantastic team as well. That would have been a good game. That team versus our team.
What would be the result
if we were all in our prime?
That would be interesting. Can we not set that up as a match now?
No, sorry, not for me. I'm waiting to go in for 2 knee replacements. That won't be me.
That's interesting actually, because a lot of players I've spoken to, knees, backs, shoulders, everything else. Is that? I'm guessing that's football. Then is it the knees?
Well, it is. And probably the worst of them all is the early onset of dementia. This is becoming so prevalent, and quite a few people that I've played alongside have sadly passed away. So that's to me is the worst one just now. The knees and the ankles and things, they're not life-threatening, but the early dementia because of the heading of the ball, the heavy balls in past days, there's ones that are taking people's lives away. So that's one that has to be looked at.
Is that something you've worried about yourself in terms of something like that, Mike?
No, I haven't worried about it. I haven't worried. No. If it comes to me, then it happens. But I haven't worried about it. No.
Yeah, it's something where they need to put a lot of money and a lot of research into it. don't really.
Well, the research has been an ongoing thing. It's what they're doing with the young players now, and the difference is now that the balls are so much lighter. Maybe that'll create a difference, and maybe with young kids now that they're not having them heading them while they're training, etc. But the balls that we used, and even the generation before us, when they were heavy and the weight on them and the amount of heading, and you see a lot that centre forwards and centre halves that are having the problem.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And after Chesterfield, then, so you went to Grimsby, didn't you? After Chesterfield,
yeah.
Was that?
Yeah.
What was that like at Grimsby? You played quite a lot of games there as well, didn't you? It was like another 150 odd games. In the final.
Yeah. I was in Grimsby. I was there 5 years, but the last year I had my worst probably injury. I had a torn Achilles, so most of that was over for the first 4 years. The games. I actually had the opportunity to go before I went to Grimsby back up here to Dundee United. When I was at Chesterfield, they said that Dundee United want to have a chat with you. So I stayed up there for a week and I trained with them, and the clubs had agreed fees, but there was just a couple of things that weren't quite right. And then I was told Grimsby came in, so I went and spoke to Grimsby, and I went there. A good club, similar size to Chesterfield. That there's so many clubs of that size. In the kind of fourth, third, and second division at that time. But we had a good team. Grimsby had got up from the fourth to the third and to the second, and some good players. We had a couple of good years. In fact, probably the second last season I was there, I think Sheffield Wednesday get promotion. Sheffield Wednesday, Newcastle, Chelsea get promotion, and then it was Manchester City and us on the same points, fourth equal. So that we had a good season then. If you compare it with the teams that were above us, the size of club, we had a real good side and played some good football.
Did you ever come up against Chesterfield again when you were playing for Grimsby?
Never played against them. No.
But you'd have definitely celebrated if you'd have scored, wouldn't you?
If I'd scored a goal, I would have celebrated. Yeah, 100%.
Is it funny looking at like you just mentioned that Grimsby there where you were alongside Man City and Newcastle and teams like that? Is it funny now when you watch football and you see how some teams go?
Well, it just shows you what massive finance can do. And you'll probably see it with Newcastle coming up as well. They've been bought just now. They'll be a big, a competing team, not just a big club, but a competing club. That's what they want to be. When you see them and you see the players that are coming in, but all the best players that are coming in, most of the best players are from out with the country.
You mentioned that you did a bit of management as well. Did you enjoy going into management?
Yeah, well, it was funny at my first two stints, when Mike Lyons came to manage at Grimsby. Mike came in, he was at Sheffield Wednesday, and he came to us as a player manager at Grimsby, and he called me into the office one day and he said, "I'm going to put you on the transfer list." I said, "Oh, right, why?" He says, "I'm just making a lot of changes." And I'm thinking to myself, this is a strange one, because I've been playing, this, that, and I've been doing all right. And but he told me later on it was because I was a bit of an influence in the dressing room. And I said to him, "Well, I'm an influence in the dressing room, but I think a good influence." And I said, "I'm not saying anything that's wrong with what you're doing. I'm not doing anything like that." He said, "Well, that's what I'm doing anyway." So he left it. But then about 6 weeks later, he pulled me back in. And he said, "I'd like you to come onto the coaching staff with me." So that was my first experience. So I was there as Mike's assistant at Grimsby. But I left Grimsby not the end of that season, the following one. I went up to Darlington. Dave Booth, who had been the Grimsby manager, he had come back into the game and got to Darlington as manager. And he asked me to go to play and be his assistant manager there. And from there, I went up to Dunfermline. I was on the coaching staff there. Then I came back down to Port Vale. I was on the coaching staff with John Rudge and Billy Dearden. And then I came back up. I was at Hamilton as assistant manager. So I've been assistant manager at every league in Scotland and England except for the Premier League in England. So
it seems like it just kind of naturally happened then. You just kind of naturally moved from playing into coaching. Is that kind of how it felt?
No, it doesn't happen naturally. It's just the same as people say that a lot of players that come in and have got good touch and things like that. I had decent touch on the ball, but that didn't just happen. That happened because when I was a kid, I kicked the ball against a wall about 1,000 times a day. I was practicing, but I didn't realise I was practicing. And that's what gave me a good touch, because I did that. Now, getting into management and things like that, I went and did coaching badges, and you learn things and you go and see things. You see people that are experienced and you watch what they're doing and you understand how they're doing it. And then you try to put it into your own ways of practice. You then look at players and think, how can I help make them better? What can I do here to improve this or that or the other? So it doesn't come naturally. It becomes because you learn it. You go and you study and you go and watch and you go and listen to people. So it's not something that you just suddenly stop. I'm not going to be a player now. I'm a coach, right? And you go in and do it. That doesn't happen. There's a lot of work happens before you get to that level.
It was really interesting when I was talking to John Duncan as well, because he was talking about how he had an idea of how he would manage and what kind of manager he would be like, and then when he started managing, he was like, no, got to chuck that all in the bin, because he was like learning on the job. And I suppose in that position when you're learning like that, you've got to be open to taking things on board and having a bit of an open mind, haven't you, and progressing.
Absolutely. There's nothing closed, and especially when you're younger, to try and absorb everything that you take in, and then what you have to try and do is roll it up into a wee ball and take the things that you want to do, what your ideas are, try and combine it with the things that you've learned from other people, and be yourself. Be yourself in the way you deal with people and treat people, but it's a tough game going into management, because a lot of things are taken out of your hands. Because it's once it goes on the pitch, there's not a lot you can do.
Were you kicking every ball when you were a coach then on the sidelines?
Yeah, but I gave it away too many times, so I stopped it.
So just to finish up, I'm just wondering, how much do you kind of keep an eye on the teams that you used to play for? Do you keep an eye on things that happen?
Yeah. I mean, I look at the scores all the time and things, but to try and keep up to date with everything, it's I've been at too many clubs to do that. It would take me too long a time. No, I always want the clubs I've been to do well, and with social media just now, you can get as much information as you want. I keep saying I'm going to come down to a game, and that's to Chesterfield, to Grimsby. I've been at Carlisle a couple of times because it's only an hour and a half down the road. But to come down to Chesterfield and Grimsby, it's day trips. So I always say I'll come, and I definitely will.
Well, we're in the same league now, wasn't Grimsby? So you can tick off.
Yeah, well, that'd be a good game to come and watch. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And just to finish off, I wondered how you did in Arthur Cox's cross country runs, because I've heard a lot about his cross country runs over the.
Listen, I don't think I should tell you. I think you should ask the other players that question, because all they ever saw was my backside.
So you weren't like Steve Ogrizovic getting lost?
No. I asked. Yeah, I was. I was blessed with having a wee bit of a good engine, what they call a good engine. So I was a good runner. The only person that got anywhere near me was the top man himself, Ernie. Ernie was always, and Ernie, when he ran, you could always hear him every, like, maybe 20 yards, a little cough to clear his throat. But it was also just to let you know that I'm still here, I'm chasing you. But he could never catch me.
Breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
Keeping you on your toes, sort of like.
Yeah.
Great, super. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been
Well, Dave.